right, hi everyone. Thanks again for joining us. See a lot of people are from Brazil who are here today, and anyone else, if you want to put where you are from, where you're joining us from in the chat, we'd love to see where you are. Oh, from Greece, wow. Well, thank you for joining us. I know it's late for you at night. So yeah, this is the Ask Anything for teaching adults and young adults and changing times with Interchange. And today we have with us Tereza Sekiya. She's the academic consultant for Cambridge University Press based in Brazil. And we also have Glenn Mathis, the publishing manager for many of our courses, including Interchange and Passages. And we also have Rosalie Love, who is the digital marketing manager, and she'll be helping us answer some questions and in the chat, and she'll keep an eye on it. And my name is Kyoko, and I'm the product marketing manager. I manage Interchange series along with some of other courses, and I will be hosting today and fielding questions. And since this is an Ask Anything session, please feel free to type in your questions in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we'll keep track of that. All right, so let's get started. We did ask, and if anyone had any questions, they could submit it in when they registered for this session. So we're just going to kick off with a couple of questions we have from that form. So the first one, I think we can go to Glenn. So Gina Garcia from Ecuador, she asked, how can we develop skills to improve language?
That's a really good question, Gina. I mean, first of all, I'd say use Interchange. That's an obvious answer. But yes, the materials in Interchange, for example, have all of the 4 skills and a great deal of practice. In addition to what's in the student's book, we also have a wealth of materials that we've recently just put on our new Cambridge One platform. So now everything is in one place for you there. So there are photocopyable worksheets with audio, there's video worksheets, in addition to the new digital workbook, which is a workbook that students can do themselves at home. It's self-study, and it is good for mobile devices. So students can practice while they're on the bus, on the train, just hanging out in a cafe. So it makes it really flexible to learn. And flexibility is really the key. Every learner is different. Everyone has different needs. And so there are lots of materials around Interchange that can help learners learn according to their style and their abilities as well. Tereza, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that's wonderful. I think that, as you said, everything you need you can find in Interchange. Great.
Okay, so we have another question that was submitted earlier, and it was from Santina Licata from the US. What's the best practice for online, best practice for oral skills online or with Interchange? Teresa, do you want to take that one?
Oh, yes. Okay, I think that there's a very, very big connection between listening and speaking. And when we talk about oral practice, I see it as one step before speaking. And we have a lot of good opportunities in Interchange to work with oral practice. Let's say we have recorded conversations, we have recorded texts, reading passages that you can use to get students acquainted not only with the pronunciation of words, but also rhythm and intonation. If we think about pronunciation exercises, I would say that they are one of the best tools to work on oral comprehension and then oral practice later on. So you start with words, you start with sentences, you bring these sentences into the classroom doing activities, oral activities that can be transformed, for example, in chants or drills. And eventually you get from examples to sentences that students can produce in small pair work activities after conversation exercises, after snapshot exercises, and even grammar exercises. But as to best practices, I would say, number one, prepare your classes. So you know exactly when to set oral production activities. And not only that, how you are going to do that, especially if students are online, if you're going to separate them in breakout rooms, if you're going to do this as a whole class activity, you have to provide the language students will use during this oral practice, be it freer or a little more controlled. And I think that the most important thing is to make it relevant. So let me make or show an example. If you ask students to look at this room and I don't know, tell me 10 sentences using colors. This could be oral practice. It's not speaking, but students will be saying sentences. But what is the relevance of an activity like this? Because students will be simply repeating sentences without any meaning. Now, if I do another exercise that is quite simple, for example, I want you to say the sentence, I don't know, I love Interchange, right? So it's gonna be, you have to say, I love Interchange. What if I do this? We love Interchange. You love Interchange. So it's guided practice, it's controlled, but it's too meaningful because I have to make sense out of my gestures in order to come up with the right sentences, right? So if you talk about oral production, I can see it in different levels. I can see it from controlled use of sentences up to speaking activities. And again, just summarizing, preparation is key. Know exactly what you want to do, how you want to do it, and make it relevant for your students. This would be my, let's say, my hints, right? I hope you find them useful. Would you like to add something? Glenn, maybe point out something in terms of exercises, because we have the ebooks and Presentation Plus with icons with the listenings that could serve as models for the oral production, right? Would you like to
Yes.
add anything else?
Well, Teresa, I just would like to add on to something that you mentioned. You hinted at some people still are teaching remotely, and we have many tools for teaching remotely, whether you've been doing it or you plan to continue doing it in the future. And Teresa just mentioned the ebook, which is a wonderful tool. It's exactly the same as the student's book. We also have the Presentation Plus software, which many teachers have been using as their whiteboard, basically, using their video conferencing tool of choice. Now, that was originally meant to be your whiteboard in the classroom, but now teachers have found that they can use it the same way using a video conferencing tool. So I encourage you to use some of the digital tools in addition to the Interchange Classroom app. Now, that app was originally created for the classroom so that you could use it with your students within the classroom. However, it works remotely as well. So you can add extra speaking activities to the lessons that are personalized. As Teresa said, the value of personalizing that is immense. You know, the content that they can create themselves is really important. And that app can help you with that. You can add activities, and your students don't have to be in the same room. It works as long as you are within the same code that the app generates for you. So I encourage you, whether you're teaching in the classroom now or whether you're still teaching remotely, try out some of those tools. The app is free, so there's no risk. So please feel free to download that, have your students download it, and then when you turn it on, you will generate a code that you can send to them, and they can practice speaking, again, using video conferencing tools if they're remote, or within the classroom if they're sitting next to each other.
Great, thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Teresa. We have a question from Kim Yochai, who's on the Zoom call with us today. What's the recommended and/or average time to complete a unit in Interchange? And also, how long does it take to complete a level? Glenn, do you want to address that?
Should I field that? Good question, Kim. And the answer is it varies. It really depends on how much time you have and how much time you need. I've visited a lot of classrooms in different countries, and it's amazing to me to watch the different speeds that teachers go through a unit of interchange. Some can do it in a week, some take longer, some can do it in less than a week. It really depends on the number of contact hours you have in the classroom and how long your semester is. So the nice thing about interchange is it's really flexible to be able to stretch to what you need or to shrink if you have a shorter class. So if you have the teacher's edition, and if you don't, I encourage you to pick that up. In the teacher's edition, within each unit, we have a chart that shows you how to lengthen your lesson, how to add more interchange content, and how to shorten your lesson if you need less time because your classes, your semesters are shorter. So it really depends on how long you have, but you can stretch interchange and shrink interchange in order to fit your lesson, your time.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
I totally agree with you, Glenn. And one of the things that I think is important to mention here is that we have different types of editions. We have a full edition that you can use from beginning to end, or if you rather work on semesters, you can use one book per semester. But generally, each level should be worked with within a year. I wouldn't, for example, extend it too much. Otherwise, it would be too hard on students to keep working on the same unit. Even if sometimes they feel a level a little bit more difficult than the other, you can extend, for example, part of it using the split edition for a longer amount of time and then go back to normal with the other editions. For example, there is also a lot of flexibility in choosing the levels you want to use, because a lot of teachers ask me the difference between intro and level 1, because there are similarities in terms of content. But I would say that level 1 is for real beginners. Level intro is for real beginners. So if you have students who have problems with speaking or writing, or if they are starting to learn English, right now start with intro. But let's say your students have studied English before and they're not beginners, then you can start with level 1. But what if these, let's say, false beginners, they should start with level 1, but they still have a lot of gaps to fill in? Then you can use intro, but maybe not the whole level. Maybe you could start with one intro way, for example, for one semester, and then move right into level 1 later on. So I think that it's a matter of knowing exactly your students' needs, the levels and the content they have to cover. And depending on the number of classes you have within a week, from 2 classes of 1 hour each, or let's say 4 classes, 2 hours and a half for each, then you can do one level, let's say from 1 year up to 4 months or 6 months, right? I just wouldn't, let's say, rush too much. For example, I wouldn't work with intensive classes and do, for example, all 4 levels in 1 year. I think that's too much information for one student, right? Because sometimes we have students coming into the school saying, well, you know, I have to learn English very, very fast. Can I do this in 1 or 2 years? Well, then we have to use our common sense and our background as teachers, right, to decide. That's it.
That's a really good point about the splits, Teresa. Thank you. My favorite story about the split editions is I met a teacher once who told me that she was using the split editions in her class. And I said, oh, so you encourage your students to buy the split editions? She said, no, I ask them to buy the full editions. Then I know they're coming back next semester.
That's interesting.
Very smart.
Very smart.
And just to add, I know Glenn mentioned the teacher's edition and their notes about the pacing guides and additional activities you can do. So we do, I mean, we have the printed teacher's edition, the full spiral bound, but we also have the PDFs of the teaching notes pages now on Cambridge One. If you've had a chance to view Glenn's presentation that we posted yesterday. And I'm sure you may have heard from some of your Cambridge representatives in your regions that all the digital content is now on Cambridge One, so you can find it there. If you have any questions about how to access or any other contents that's in Cambridge One, please feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A box, and we'd be happy to answer that on the call. All right, so let's move on to the next question. While we're on the topic of teaching online and remotely, we have a question from Henu Pradoto from Indonesia. I don't know if she's with us because it's really early in the morning over there, but this is an interesting question, I think, that other people might be interested in. And she asked, how can we adapt materials from Interchange into online classes? I think, Teresa, do you want to take that? I know your presentation touched upon some of that, and I'm sure you have other ideas that you might want to share.
My belief is that you can adapt anything you want, provided that you know exactly what you are doing and what kind of goals you want to achieve. If we talk about Interchange, we have everything we need to teach online. We have the presentation plus with all the tools, with all the images, with all the exercises. We also have the app, the classroom app, and even if they are in different places, in different cities, in different houses, they can access the activities and share them together with the teacher. We have the Cambridge One full of exercises, and some of these exercises can be redone in the classroom to, let's say, clarify some questions or difficulties the students might present. So, and not to mention the ebook, right? So just to start from this point, I would say that we have everything we need to teach online. But what I love the most about Interchange, it's the fact that it's very user-friendly. And the content can be adapted to any kind of teaching environment in every kind of student that we have in the classroom, be it a very, very fast-paced student or a kind of slow-paced student, So what happens is, let's say I use all the tech tools that I have for Interchange, but I look at an exercise and I can see it can be done in a different way. So nowadays, it's very easy to use any kind of tools that you have available, be it Google Docs, Padlet, or even WhatsApp. One of the examples in my pre-recorded session is using WhatsApp for information. And if you do this, you can transform almost anything you have in Interchange into an online activity or an online class. So for example, if I have a topic for a reading passage, I can ask students what they know about the topic. And because the reading passage generally appears towards the end of the unit, students have already had the opportunity of working on grammar and vocabulary. So you can ask them to search online for ideas and vocabulary related to that specific topic. Then you can divide them into breakout rooms, and they would discuss what ideas would be interesting to share with the whole class. Then you call them all back, and every group from different breakout rooms would say, well, you know, I found out about this topic, this, and that. And then the other, no, I found something different, and so on and so forth. So this is just an example of something that can be done. But for example, if you are talking about discussion, generally, teachers got kind of frustrated when students do not speak. And they say, well, you know, my students, they don't speak. But then again, we need to think in order to be able to speak or to write. And we have to give students this opportunity of organizing our ideas. So for example, if you are putting students to work together to discuss something, why not ask them to, I don't know, enter Padlet. You prepare a wall with key questions, and some students will go there and they will share their opinions about the topic. So for example, let's say, apartments or houses, what do you prefer? So you ask students individually to write sentences related to both ideas. Why is it good to live in apartments or houses? Then students can go back and add comments to the sentences that were there. Then in groups, in breakout rooms, they organize the comments in order to, let's say, group ideas that they are going to use while they are discussing whether it's better to live in an apartment or in a house. These are just examples of things that you can take right from the book and adapt to students' reality, using their background knowledge in order to do so. They can use Padlet, but they can use also Google Docs, or they can talk over WhatsApp or any kind of app for messages. The most important thing is to make it relevant, right? In my opinion. What do you think? Do you agree with me, Glenn?
Oh, absolutely. And
Okay,
also, we know that teachers needed a lot of help when they had to move online. So we created a guide for you so you can start using Interchange online. And we'll provide the link to that. It's a nice PDF that you can download for free. And it has some really specific ideas of how you can teach online
yes.
using Interchange. So I encourage you, if you're still struggling with online teaching, and it is new, it's different. Many of us really had to adapt to it, whether as learners or teachers. Please take a look at that guide. It offers some really good guidance and some really good ideas for you. And hopefully you can take that and really feel more comfortable with online teaching.
Oh, great. And the good thing about this guide, the how to teach remotely with Interchange, right, is that it covers all types of exercises in Interchange. So if you want to make any exercise an online activity, you can do that. Even if you think that you're not so creative at that moment, go to the guide and find information there, right, guide?
Exactly.
Okay.
Great. Thank you both. All right, here's another question from Idea. I think that's how you read the name Peralta. I think she's on the Zoom call today. She asked, how can I apply the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework with Interchange students? Teresa, do you want to address that?
Yes, I think that this is one of our favorite topics, because you cannot teach English just through English and per English. I think that when we do teach English, we are teaching a lot of other things. And one of the things that we have to, let's say, build or improve during our classes is the students' abilities, and they are connected to the competencies. But remember that classic question, what are we teaching, grammar or vocabulary? You cannot teach grammar without vocabulary and vice versa. So the same thing happens with life competencies. It's almost impossible to work only with language. While we are developing language, we are also developing different types of competencies. For example, the fluency exercises that we have towards the end of each cycle of Interchange. We have group work, we have discussion, role play, pair work. When we are having students work group, when we group them together, we are already working with 4 very important competencies, the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Example, get together, have students get together in groups and work out, for example, a new restaurant. So they have to work together. And this is not a matter of simply talking to each other. They have to create something together. They have to reason upon what kind of restaurant, what kind of public they want to cover, and a lot of other details. And to do that, they are doing this together. Just here, we have already the 4 C's. If we think about emotional development, for example, which is one of the layers that go through all the competencies, we have to take that into account as well, because they will learn how to work with one another. And if we think about social responsibility, what type of restaurant are we going to create? So this is just one example, but we have, for example, conversations when we set a dialogue within real situations that students might encounter in everyday life. In there, we're not just talking about communication. For example, you're talking about behavior, your attitude, how you address other people, what can you expect from other people, and how do you react? For example, if you encounter any kind of problems. If we think about, for example, word power exercises, they are one of my favorites. You are working with learner training. You're teaching students how to categorize, how to organize ideas in mind map, and they are tools for production. But there's never enough of anything. So if you want to dive deep into the subject and work more closely to each of the competencies from the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework, this is the result of a huge survey. And we came up with this framework, and it's really complete. And we wanted to offer all the teachers the information and the tools to apply this knowledge into the classes in order to favor students not only with development of language skills, but also life skills. So I'm gonna share, let me see here. I want to show you a site that we prepared. It's called Life Skills, Cambridge Life Skills Framework. I think that Rosalie is going to insert the link. It's www.cambridge.org/CLCF, Cambridge Life Skills Competencies. Here is the site that will provide you with a lot of information on how this framework came to life. And here you can download the introductory guide. But let's say you want to work with more ideas on each of the competencies, or if you spot that some of your students, they need to develop more learning to learn competencies. In this case, if you scroll down, you're going to get more and more information, including booklets that are available for download for free for each of the competencies in the framework, including the layer of emotional development, which is one of the topics that are, let's say, a lot of people are concerned with that, especially after almost 2 years of pandemic and social distancing, right? And probably are going to say, okay, I can learn about how the framework came to life. I know how important the competencies are, but how can I adapt them to my reality? Well, we have 3 booklets, and they are addressed to different age targets. So if you're working, for example, with Interchange, then you can use the booklet that talks about applying the competencies with adult students, for example, or even teenage learners, if you have very young students studying with Interchange. But still, you might think, well, gee, but the thing is, what if I had some ready-made activities? So then I could choose the ones that are better suited to my classes, to the pages I'm using right now. Then you can scroll down a little more, and then you have ready-made activities for them to use. So here, let me get the adult cards, just an example. So here are the activity cards. You have all the activities ready for use. You have just to read them and find the ones that are more suitable for your classes or for the classes you're teaching right now. And it always comes with, let's say, a hint or a suggestion on how to use it online or in a face-to-face class. So here, I am going to show you, we have activities for creative thinking. Look, we have thousands of activities, right? And if you scroll down, you move to critical thinking. And then you go to, after that, oops, learning to learn, and so on and so forth. We have all the 6 competencies plus emotional development with sample activities that you can use right away. But what I would suggest, because sometimes you have a lot of students and very little time to work with everything from the book, what I would say is read the suggestion and adapt to something that you are already doing with Interchange. Because you can apply to for example, DICE dialogues is something that you can apply to one of the conversations that we are using, that you are teaching when you are working with conversations with Interchange. So everything can be adapted to your classes. You do the exercise in a different way. And when it's finished, you ask students to open their books and surprise, wow, the activity is finished. I have already done that. So students only complete the exercise and it's done. So it saves a lot of time and you are able to work with anything you want, including the competencies for life skills, right? So I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay. Well, that was a lot of information, right? So access the site. Everything is there for free, right?
Yes, thank you, Teresa. That was very comprehensive. I think I learned a new thing or two right
A
now.
little too
Yeah.
much, maybe, right?
No, I think it's great. All right, so just kind of to switch, just before we go on, I see that Carla asked about a certificate for this webinar, which I forgot to mention at the beginning. So yes, and Rosalie did reply into the chat. So we'll share a link to a quick survey or feedback survey form at the end of this session, which should take a few minutes, and then you'll give you a link to download your certificate after you fill that out for us. So keep an eye in the chat. Rosalie will post that later on. All right, so kind of switching subjects, we have Monica Navarro Morales from Mexico who asked, how has Interchange remained successful among other book series throughout all this time? So maybe this is a question that you want to kick off, Glenn, because I know you've dealt with Interchange through multiple editions. So
Monica, that's a very good question. And this is not a joke. I was actually asked that question when I joined Cambridge University Press. That was my first interview question, was what has made Interchange so popular? They knew I would be working with Interchange and they wanted to make sure that I really understood what was so great about it. And my answer was, it works. And it's a really simple answer, I know. And if you look at our website for Interchange 5th edition, that's one thing we talk a lot about, is it works. But really, that's the truth. It has been very, very successful because it helps students learn and it helps them see that they're learning, as well as you as a teacher. Gives you the tools you need to successfully teach and allows you to see them making progress. Again, I mentioned earlier, I sometimes visit classrooms in various places, which I love. I'd love to just sit in and see how teachers teach. It's really what helps us continue to make Interchange work for you, is to see how teaching is changing and to see what teachers need. And it's so amazing when I go to the intro level classes and the students are very, very scared. Here's the stranger sitting next to them. And the teachers will ask the students inevitably, say hello to Glenn, and they'll turn and they'll say, hello, my name is, and I'll say, hello, I'm Glenn. And their eyes will open and they will say, they have this look on their face because it worked. It works. I was able to speak to the stranger in the classroom and he understood me. So it's true. It really helps students learn and it helps to see them make progress. And we keep working on Interchange with every new edition and between editions as well to make changes to it, to make it better, because the world is changing, as we've seen, especially in the past few years. And so we need to make sure that Interchange keeps changing and keeps being relevant to you and your classrooms. But the short answer is it works. Teresa, anything to add to that? You've worked with Interchange for
Yes,
a
there's
long
something
time
that
as
I would
well.
love to add. I totally agree with you. And I've been hearing this kind of sentences throughout the years that every time students leave the class, they leave with something they learn how to say in English. So it's not a matter of waiting for a year or two in order to be able to speak. They speak right from the start, because this is what Interchange does. It empowers the students to use the language they need to, let's say, express themselves. But I think that there is something that we need to say right now, because we have all these Interchange teachers who have worked with us for so long. I believe that the success of Interchange is, let's say, we have to credit that to all the teachers. Because whenever, Glenn, last year, he almost had a heart attack when I suggested, if we wanted, we could launch a new edition of Interchange every year. But then it wouldn't be, yes, it wouldn't be an Interchange book, and it wouldn't be a Cambridge University Press book. Every time there will be, when we plan a new edition, it is carefully planned. And one of the things that we do first is to listen to our teachers. So a lot of you have been involved in surveys, let's say, in actions where every single detail of Interchange was analyzed. What we should keep, what should change, what we have to do for the next edition. We listen to you. And all the success is due to the suggestions, the, let's say, the ideas that you came up with. And you, let's say, helped us to make Interchange suitable for any kind of student in any kind of country. It can be used by older students, younger students at universities, let's say private, public schools, language centers. And it wouldn't happen if we didn't have a very good idea of what kind of exercises students or content teachers would need to develop for their students. And I think that this is a very, very good moment to say thank you very much for your cooperation, because this is what made a huge difference in helping Interchange evolve with the teachers and for the teachers and for our students, of course, in the long run, right?
Yes,
Okay.
you've made Interchange over the years, and you'll continue to make
Yes.
it. And we will continue listening to you. For example, when we released Interchange 5th edition, people told me they really like the digital materials, the presentation software, they like the tests, they like the online workbook, and they liked everything around it. But they said, everyone told me, well, it's great, but you have everything in different places. And we had to put things in different places, the Web Hub, the Cambridge Learning Management System, and other places because of the type of platforms that they were. They couldn't all be in the same place. They didn't work that way. But people told us that they wanted everything in the same place. And so that's why this year we were finally able to put everything into Cambridge One. So because of you, you told us to do this, so we did. And everything is now in Cambridge One, all in one place, so that you can go and access everything without having to go to the website and a learning management system. It's all there. It's all in Cambridge One. So keep telling us what you need. Keep telling us what will help you teach better, and we will listen and we will make it so.
definitely.
Yeah, great, thank you for that. Just want to give a shout out to Carla, who's told us she's been using Interchange since 2008. And she
Oh,
wrote in the
great.
chat that Interchange really helps to learn, and Jack Richards is a great linguist. So we have a Jack Richards fan, and I know there are others out there. He's a superstar in terms of the world of ELT. And we also have a comment from Kim. I'm just going to read it out loud. It says, I love Interchange with my adult learners and just recommended it to my middle school admin and will begin using it here now. One thing I find not as useful is that your units are comprehensive, yet the prepared test seems less so. Has any consideration been given to adding more comprehensive tests and just have the shorter ones available to be used as quizzes? Glenn, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll be happy to take one. That's a very good comment, and it's interesting because I've actually heard that, and I've heard the opposite, that there's too much assessment. So it's really difficult to find everyone exactly where they need to be. And that's something that what I've talked to teachers about is something similar to what we mentioned earlier. Everyone is different. Everyone has different needs, teachers and students. So there are other ways to assess that are not just in the test as well. So there are lots of extra materials around Interchange that you can use for assessment. One thing that I've mentioned to teachers is the digital workbook that is on Cambridge One and reports to a grade book to you, the teacher. You can use that to factor into their grade. And that's actually a little less stressful assessment because some learners, when they hear test, that's a scary word, and people psychologically get very fearful of the word test. Whereas if you say, go do your digital workbook, and these are exercises that students can do again on the bus, in a cafe, at home, laying on their beds. They can do them anywhere, on their phones, on their tablets, on their laptops. So this is a little less stressful, but you can still receive those grades and use that as incremental assessment. So it's not so scary. You're not giving them a big test, but rather you're giving them little tests as they go. And that way you can help see how they're doing, and you can stop and help them improve by giving extra exercises if needed. If it appears that your students are not learning the material very quickly, if the material is difficult. Frankly, English is a difficult language. We have some really strange grammar. Present perfect, anyone? Students have a hard time with some of those grammar points, and you may need to slow down and you may need to spend more time with them depending on how well your students do. So something like a digital workbook allows you to see their progress throughout the unit before you get to the more high stakes test. So that way that high stakes test can be a little more, a little less frightening to students and a little more comforting when they get to that stage of the unit. So I encourage you to start looking at some of the incremental assessment techniques that you can use that hopefully will be a little less stressful for students. Teresa, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, because I think that this last couple of years, I think that there's a change in terms of evaluation. We are gradually moving from summative assessment, which is represented by these written tests, to formative assessment. So the idea is to evaluate students a lot more through performance during role plays, group work, projects, and also activities that they develop throughout the classes, right? And if we take into account the online environment, it's a lot harder to ask the students to complete tasks if they are online, right? Even if you transport information to a Google Doc in the format of a quiz, it's not only going to take time for you to prepare them, to prepare these tests online, but also for students to take them. So if we think that we have 16 units in each level, that would be 16 tests, short tests, apart from the midterm ones. So it's too much, in my opinion, right? Too much time devoted to written tasks, while you could do something, let's say, to evaluate students in a more, let's say, wholesome way, so to speak, not only in terms of language, but also in terms of skills. I'm not saying that you should not use all all the tests, right? Because we have one test per unit because we have different types of reality. Some schools, they are, let's say, obliged to give one evaluation per unit, but we make it shorter in order to avoid taking too much time for a written test. But in case you want to really, let's say, apply tests and let's say more comprehensive ones, what I would suggest is use them as model. And then you can, let's say, place your, let's say, personal touch. And then whatever you think it's too easy or too short, you can increase the number of items or the level of difficulty in making it a little more suitable for your reality. So again, as Jack Richards keeps saying, the book is not a Bible. You can use it as, let's say, as a guide throughout the development of your course. But that means you can also adapt the content anytime you want for any purpose. And that includes also evaluations, right? That's why we have several. So teachers will be able to choose from all the, let's say, types of evaluation that we offer, but they're not meant to use all of them, right? So it's really up to you on how or how many you want to use and the length you want to apply to each of the evaluations, right? I
Absolutely.
I think that answers your question.
All right, great, thank
I think
you.
I am more a teacher centered, right? My view is really, let's say, related to the classroom and the students, right?
Yes,
Okay,
well, thank you. We also have a comment from Jorge in the chat says, who says that I used Interchange for a long time now, and his school has switched to Pearson and the difference is noticeable. So hopefully you can advocate for them to switch back to Interchange. so, yeah, your students can benefit from learning with the course that you love to teach as well. Okay, let's see. Question. So there's one specific question that was submitted earlier about Cambridge 1. And Oksana from Brazil asked, can I register as both student and teacher on Cambridge 1? Glenn, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Well, that's a very good question. Well, who am I kidding? These have all been very good questions, but that's an interesting one. The short answer is yes, you can. But what I would add is you actually don't need to. We've made it so simple that when you register as a teacher, you can see what the students can see. In fact, you can go on to Cambridge 1 right now and you can register, which is very easy to do. If you have a Cambridge LMS login from the older LMS, that login will transfer. So you don't even have to change, you don't have to sign up again. But it's very easy to log in as an administrator, as a teacher or administrator, as a student, or as a parent as well. So parents have the opportunity to log in and see the progress that their students are doing. So you would obviously want to log in as a teacher. Then you would go in there, find your course, find Interchange, you just search for Interchange, and then you'll be able to see everything that the students will be able to see. All of your teacher resources, anything that the students need to have available, such as the audio and the video, you will also see. You'll be able to look through the digital workbook so you can see the exact exercises that your students will be doing. And then the students, when they sign up with their codes in their students' books, they will also see those activities, and then you'll give them a class code, set up your class, and then students' scores will submit to your gradebook, and you can see exactly how they're doing. But yes, as a teacher, you can go in and see everything that the students can see. So yes, you could log in as a student using a different email, but you don't really need to. You can just log in as a teacher and you'll be able to see everything that the student can see. Hope that helps.
Can I add something to this question? I think I understand the reason this question was asked, because before Cambridge 1, we had two different things. We had the online workbook, and both students and teachers would have access to that. And we also had the online self-study practice. And for the online self-study practice on the LMS, teachers would not be able to see what students were doing. But now, when all this content was moved to Cambridge One, they adapted the content and transformed both things into only one component, the digital workbook. So now there is no part of, let's say, practice that that teachers won't have access to. Nowadays, both students and teachers will have access to the same content. So I think that you are referring to what used to happen on the LMS, which is done, is history. Now we live in a new era of Cambridge One, right?
That's right. Yeah, that was something that we had to do in order to make it truly self-study. That meant that the students could log in without a class code. They just use the code in their books. But the downside of that is that it would not report to the teacher. But teachers told us they didn't want to set up two classes for self-study and online workbooks. So many teachers use the online workbook as a gradable part of their course. But yes, now you can see everything through Cambridge One. So your grades will report to you. Exactly.
Yes.
And I also added in the chat that you can, I know Glenn mentioned that you can use your current login for the Cambridge Learning Management System on Cambridge One, but you can also use your cambridge.org, the product website login. If you've been, downloading resources and you already have a login, you can use the same username and password on Cambridge One, as well as if you're a user of our Cambridge Dictionary Plus, that login will work on Cambridge One as well. And in addition, if you want to use your social login, we have the function to accept Facebook or Google logins on Cambridge One, so you don't have to set up a new account. And in that case, we'll just ask you for like a few additional questions about and then you'll be on your way. So we made it simple and easy for you to sign up or log in with other, login information you might already have. Okay, all right, so this might be a fairly easy question, which I'm gonna pitch to Glenn again as the publishing manager. Patricia from Brazil asks, why aren't there higher levels of interchange, like interchange levels 4 and 5?
You said it was going to be an easy question. It actually is an easy question, but it's definitely not a bad question. I'm glad that you have a need for the higher levels. That means, again, interchange is working. It's helping you get your students up to a higher level of proficiency. We do actually have higher levels. We do have a level 4 and a level 5, but it's not called interchange. It is called passages. It is also written by Professor Jack C. Richards and is meant to sit on top of interchange. And the reason it has a different name is that it is also used for many of our other courses as well. It sits on top of other courses, so it has a different name. But it really is interchange 4 and 5. And is meant to get your learners up to a higher level there. So I encourage you to try out passages if you haven't. Passages also, we've moved all of the materials onto Cambridge One. So if you're not familiar with passages, again, sign up for Cambridge One using any of those methods that we mentioned. If you're anything like me, you forget your passwords all the time. So just click on login with Google or login with Facebook. It's very, very easy to do. And just search passages. And you can see the 2 levels of passages, and you can take a tour of the materials that are in there as well. So I encourage you to do that.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, we have just about a little over 5 minutes. Maybe we can end with this question from Alan in the US. He'd like to know if there are any other interactive learning games out there that you can use. And I know, Glenn, you mentioned the Interchange app. Tereza, I know you mentioned Kahoot in your video that we posted earlier this week. Maybe you want to explain a little bit more, or if you have any other ideas that can be incorporated into the classroom that you'd like to share.
You know, it's amazing. I think that teachers are creative by nature. Whenever you look at a page, we teachers look at the pages of a book in a different way. We don't look at the exercise that is on the page. We look at how we are going to work with this exercise in the classroom. So whenever I look at something, I imagine doing this activity in a way that will help students achieve a goal. And this goal may not only be a language goal. For example, students can work on pronunciation, or students can work on, for example, one of the skills. I gave an example of Kahoot using a word power exercise, making it an unscramble activity. But there are so many things that you can do. Interchange works with a lot of topics that are based on authentic sources, researches that were conducted for different types of topics, music, sports, lifestyle. So this information can be, let's say, compiled, and then you can use it in the form of a game-like exercise. What would I say game-like exercise? Because if you ask students to read the exercise, listen, or read a text and fill out the exercise with the answers, students might do it, but they won't be interacting with the content. So every time I look at a page, I think, how can I do it in a different way? So for example, if I have dialogue, why can't I write phrases, lines of the dialogue on slips of paper or on sheets of paper? And if I am on a face-to-face reality, I can give one sheet of paper to every student. And students will have to, these students holding the cards, they have to stand up, face with the with the cards or the sheets of paper, facing the other students. So students will read the lines and they will put the dialogue in order. It's not a competition, but it has a game-like element. There is a very clear goal students will have to pay attention to in order to fulfill the task, right? And this is an example where students couldn't care less about grammar. They only want to place the dialogue in order. And when we talk about dialogue, we talk about questions and answers, right? If we talk about questions, that means for every question, there should be an answer. So they will start with the questions and then they would arrange an answer for each of them, and they would start making sense out of the dialogue. If I am online, I can do the same thing in a different way. But how am I going to ask students to do this? Show the sheet of paper, and with a lot of students in different videos, some of them won't turn on their cameras. Well, then I can divide students into different groups. If I have 14 students, 2 groups of 7, I divide the dialogue in 7 lines. So I'll say, okay, divide yourselves into different numbers from 1 through 7. So I will say then, okay, number 1, please copy this sentence. Number 2, copy this sentence, and so on and so forth with all the 7 sentences. They don't know that yet, but these are the lines of a dialogue. So I'll divide them into breakout rooms, every one of them with the corresponding line that they copied, be it on a piece of paper or even on their cell phones, and they, in breakout rooms, will make sense out of the dialogue. And the teacher will walk from one breakout room to another in order to help students. So basically what I am doing is adding a game-like element to a real exercise that is in Interchange without having the trouble of preparing cards or changing the content. And once they finish, they will open up the books and the dialogue is there, it's completed. They just have to listen. And the most important thing, they have the impression while they are doing the exercise that nothing that they are doing yet is related to the book, because sometimes, especially teenagers, they keep saying, oh, do I have to open the book again? Oh no, let's play. Okay, oh, you don't want to work with a book? Okay, no problem. Would you like to play a game? Okay, so let's do an activity then. And then right after the activity is ready. So I will do that with every single activity that you have in the book, provided that you have enough time. For example, something that I love doing, for example, for reading passages is reading races. You prepare questions and you shuffle the order, divide students into groups. You give one question at a time, and students will come up with the answers. And once they finish one question, you give another. And the group who finishes all the questions first will win the game. But guess what? What you are doing is preparing them for the text. Because when they open up their books, let's say 50% or 70% of the content has already been exploited, right? So this is one of the things that I would suggest in terms of providing students with, let's say, motivational games, right, so to speak. But we do have a lot of extra games in the format of PDFs. One of the resources that are available on Cambridge One has to do with games, and they do not require photocopyable material. So let's say there are suggestions on how you can work with different exercises in the book in a different way. So they have this game-like element that you can apply. But you see, when I prepared the session that I recorded for this event, I was, one of the things that I said is that you look at an activity from another book, or you hear an activity that was prepared by another teacher, you see something on television, or you use something from one exercise in Interchange. Sometimes you use a reference book. Sometimes you don't know where the idea comes from. You know you have used it before, or maybe you did it in a slightly different way, but maybe it will work here. So this is how we create new ideas or different ideas with sometimes in the format of games based on the content that you have in the book. And I keep saying this is the best way that you can work on games, right? Because if you use an activity and turn it into a game, you are preparing students to use the book. So when students open up the book, the activity is ready. Why is this so important? Because we have 16 units in the book. If you keep on giving them extra games and games, you will end up, let's say at unit, I don't know, 14, maybe with, or maybe unit 8, with most of the year covered, and you still have, let's say, 10 units to go. So then again, we do have to keep an eye on the amount of time that we have to develop all the activities. And I think that we have all the source we need for a springboard for, let's say, extra activities right from the book. Gee, I think I talked a lot.
No, they're all great tips, and I hate to cut you off, but we are running over on time. So yeah, there's one, no problem. There's one question we didn't get to. Maybe we can address it in some form, maybe on a blog and future webinars. It was about icebreakers, so we'll take that and we'll address that at another point. But thank you again for everyone for joining us from near and far. Rosalie has put the link to the survey where you can, if you submit, you'll get a link to download your certificate. And yeah, thank you to Glenn. And thank you to Glenn and Teresa and Rosalie for the session. And we hope you enjoyed this, and we'll have the recording available of the session in case you want to share it with your colleagues, or you want to revisit any of the things that Glenn and Teresa mentioned. during the
Can
session.
I just say thank you very much for all teachers who participated, and thank you so much, Kyoko and Glenn, for having me here. It was really a huge, huge pleasure.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for using Interchange, and hope it keeps working for you.